Hello. Hi, darling. It's so wonderful to hear your voice again. I'll be honest, it took quite some effort to track down a new number for either of you. So, how are things going on your end? Helen asked gently, trying to hide her excitement, though her voice carried hints of the fear and sadness she was feeling underneath. Carmen paused for a moment, deciding to play it safe. New phone? Who's this? She replied, keeping her tone guarded. For goodness sake, Carmen, it's me, your mom. I'm sorry it took so long to call, but I figured you'd recognize my voice after all these years, Helen said, her voice laced with a mix of frustration and a touch of hurt. Carmen couldn't help but smile a little. She recognized her mom's voice immediately, but the circumstances made her wary. This caution gave her a subtle way to address her mom's emotional absence without coming off as rude. Oh, hi, Mom, she replied finally. You caught me by surprise, and I was just being careful. I didn't want to fall for some random caller pretending to know me. Carmen hesitated again, debating before gently challenging her mom's portrayal of their relationship. Calmly, but firmly, she chose not to hide her polite disagreement. Mom, I don't think the last 3 years qualify as your care or affection. I was almost 14 when you left, and this call is the first contact I've had from you since then. I'm 17 now, and your love has been more absent than present. Helen exhaled deeply. I'm so sorry, Carmen. Back then, everything felt impossible, and I believed leaving was my only choice. But let's not dwell on that right now. I really just wanted to check in on you, and maybe talk to your siblings, too, if they're around. Life is more stable now, and I want to be there for you all. I hope we can reconnect, sweetheart, and that you'll get to enjoy what having a wealthy mom can mean. Now that Terry and I are married, I can do so much more for all of you. You, Lena, and Dean. Our lives are a world away from what they were like with your father. Don't get me wrong, darling. Your dad's a good man, but he couldn't give us the lifestyle Terry provides now. Terry treats me wonderfully, and I love it. Helen's voice grew more animated. I want to introduce you kids to the kind of life that's truly enjoyable, the way things should be, and maybe make up for the hard years when we struggled because of your father's limited income. Maybe this will help ease the guilt I feel for leaving so abruptly. By now, Carmen's anger was just beneath the surface, simmering with resentment. She loved her father, Carl Richards, deeply and admired him for the way he had taken on the role of a single parent, bearing the heartbreak of Helen's sudden departure. Ed had stepped up to raise 2 daughters, one facing teenage turmoil, the other only 10 years old, alongside a spirited 20-year-old son. Carmen also took great pride in her dad's determination to rebuild their lives after her mother's exit. Before she left, Helen had drained all the family's bank accounts, leaving them in a financial crisis far worse than Carmen could remember. At 14, Carmen had taken on the role of homemaker, trying her best to help her family stay afloat. Together, her dad and siblings endured a tough 8 months. But things eventually improved as her father made transformative changes. And now, life was better than she'd ever expected. Carmen could have easily placed all the blame for their struggles squarely on her mother. By the time she was 14, Carmen's notorious fiery temper was well known, ready to ignite at any moment. But suddenly, she felt a wave of calm wash over her, allowing her to see clearly how she should handle herself and what needed to be said in this conversation with her mom. It felt incredible. She realized that if she had confronted Helen in that instant, her mom would likely have hung up, and Carmen might have lost the chance to reconnect with her. This approach wouldn't have done anyone any good, and despite all her mother's mistakes, Carmen truly wanted to keep some sort of relationship with her. With this new sense of calm, Carmen chose her next steps carefully. She intended to share her feelings and point out her mother's missteps, but in a way that kept the door open for a relationship between her mother and the kids. Yes, this was the right way to go. She felt a broad grin forming as a voice inside suggested that she had just learned an important lesson in life. Excitedly, she complimented her mother, telling her how stunning she looked and promising to send a photo through her phone's camera. She asked Helen to stay on the line and not to hang up. Carmen positioned herself in front of the mirror on her closet door, with golden sunlight streaming through the window, It was just after 4 o'clock in the mid-June evening. She beamed at her reflection, admiring her wheat gold hair styled in an elegant updo, and the full-length lavender evening dress that hugged her figure with graceful sophistication. The gown reached the floor, and her long white gloves, stopping just above her elbows, symbolized her transformation from a self-conscious girl into a young lady with poise. She took a few photos, selected her favorite, and quickly sent the selfie to her mother's cell phone. Eagerly, she asked if her mom had received it and waited, prompting her to share her thoughts. A silence lingered on the line as Helen absorbed the photo, reflecting on the changes the last 3 years had brought to her growing daughter. Helen eventually broke the quiet, marveling at Carmen's beauty, struggling to find words while holding back tears and feeling a lump in her throat. She expressed how much she missed Carmen and acknowledged how much her daughter had grown, questioning her own choices in that moment. Helen's murmured response was hesitant, but Carmen moved forward. She mentioned how beautiful Lena looked and headed to her younger sister's room, where she found Lena putting the finishing touches on her hair. A thick, honey-brown mane styled in an elegant updo, framing her face. Lena's hair fell in soft curls, her big blue-gray eyes and gentle features captivating anyone who looked. Her slightly upturned nose and dimpled smile only added to her charm. Like Carmen, Lena wore an evening gown, delicate and graceful in a more subtle style than her older sisters. "Hey, strike a pose. Mom's on the phone, and I'll send her your picture," Carmen called out, moving around to capture Lena's best angle. Assisting them was a woman in her mid-30s, dressed in an evening gown that exuded a refined elegance bound to leave an impression. With a timeless beauty that turned heads, she noticed the smartphone directed at her and Lena and started to step aside. But Carmen stopped her, motioning for her to stay. "No, Diane, stay where you are. I want you in the picture too," Carmen insisted. Lena, a little taken aback, rolled her eyes and, cupping her hands like a megaphone, called out toward the phone, "Hey there, ma'am. Can't chat now, but let's catch up soon." Carmen moved around, snapping a few photos of Lena and Diane before announcing they were done. "All right, ladies, I'll pick the best one and send it over." After a pause, she brought the phone back to her ear and added, "Mom, you probably wouldn't recognize Lena now. I mean, she's even got curves." Lena's cheeks flushed as she shot back, "Carmen, you're such a dork. Hush." But despite herself, a shy smile crept onto her face as the other women chuckled at her embarrassment. Carmen turned back to the phone, smiling. "So, what do you think, Mom?" Helen struggled for words, her voice full of awe. "Oh my goodness. I'm speechless, honey. You both look absolutely stunning. You've grown up so beautifully, both of you. I'm so proud of you and Lena. I only wish I could be there with you right now." She kept pulling the phone away to take another look at the photos of her daughters, each one tugging at her heart with a mix of longing and regret. Quickly, she wiped the tears that threatened to spill and focused again on the images. "But tell me, Carmen, why are you both dressed up like this? You're not both going to prom, are you?" she asked, clearly puzzled. Carmen could tell she had her mom hooked and was ready to play it up a bit. "Oh no, Mom. This is even better than prom. Remember that big annual soiree you always wanted to be invited to but never quite made the list? The summer gala hosted by Sedgwick and McTaggart." Helen perked up immediately. "Yes, of course. That event was always the highlight of the year. Oh, how I'd have loved to attend. Only the most influential, glamorous people in the whole state get invited." Her voice was filled with wistful longing. "It's always been a dream of mine to wear a gorgeous evening gown and mingle with high society. It would be like a fairy tale come true," she sighed dreamily before snapping back to the moment. "But wait, did you and Lena get hired as hostesses or something for the party? Oh my goodness, that's amazing. I can't believe it. Just imagine, my girls, there at the event, mingling with the social elite. Nous, mon. We're not there as staff. We're invited as guests." Carmen revealed the exciting secret, with Lena smiling proudly beside her. "And that's not all. Dad is the guest of honor at the event. They're planning a special surprise to recognize him. Isn't that incredible? I'm even going to be part of the ceremony. Oh, Mom. I'm nervous, but it's so thrilling. Helen was utterly stunned. What? Are you serious? Carmen, you've got to be kidding. Why on earth would a humble cost control clerk be invited as the guest of honor to such a high-profile event? She scoffed. Things like that don't happen in real life. Come on, honey. Tell me the truth. You're just pulling my leg, right? Well, naturally, Mom, Carmen laughed. Lena and I just dress up every day to wait for your call, so we can tease you. But seriously, Mom, a lot has changed since you left. We were devastated, all of us were. But somehow, Dad brought us all together, even Dean, and he managed to rebuild a life for us without you. Maybe I should fill you in on what's happened since you left. We need to make it quick, though, because the limo with Clara and Dean should be back. She checked her watch. In about 15 minutes. After that, we'll have to go. Carmen took a deep breath, steadying herself before beginning to tell their story. Dad was practically shattered when he found out about you with that older man. You disappeared right after he confronted you. To be honest, I think you were planning to leave anyway. You just moved up your timeline. At this point, Helen interrupted, her voice a barely audible whisper. I'm sorry, Carmen. I didn't realize you knew what happened between me and your dad. But yes, after he found out, I felt like I had to go. What good would it have done to stay? He even had photos of us. Terry and I decided to leave the city, and we've been staying in his apartment in Manhattan ever since. Carmen, I'm sorry you kids had to get pulled into all this, Helen said, frustration creeping into her voice. But honestly, I don't think it was right for your dad to let you all in on the mess between us. Mom, let's get one thing straight, Carmen retorted, her voice taut with exasperation. Dad didn't tell us anything. I was the one who filled him in. Who do you think took those pictures? She took a deep breath, steadying herself before laying it all out. Lena and I came home early that day. The house was dead quiet, except for some odd sounds coming from your room. I told Lena to stay downstairs, then went up to see what was going on. I saw you with him, Mom. I caught it all, snapped a photo, sent it to Dad, and left. We hung out with friends the rest of the day, trying to forget. When we got back, you were still locked in your room, crying. By morning, you were gone. So yeah, that's my last memory of you, Mom. You in Dad's bed with some stranger. Tell me that image didn't scar me. Carmen paused, her voice catching as she added bitterly. At least you two covered yourselves. Otherwise, I'd still be in therapy right now. Helen gasped, her tone shifting to anger. Carmen, I can't believe you'd throw all of this back in my face. How could you? Carmen shot back, barely containing her emotions. I don't think we're on equal footing here, Mom. If you want to compare betrayals, trust me, you're outmatched. And if you think I'm the only one who feels this way, just wait until you hear what Lena and Dean have to say. She took a steadying breath, working to keep her voice even. So, do you want the update on the last 3 years or not? Carmen surprised herself with how calmly she was handling the conversation. Reflecting on it, she realized how much she'd grown up over the past few years. Helen, on the other hand, felt a wave of regret. To even begin repairing her relationship with her children, she knew she'd have to face the consequences of her actions fully, not just brush over them. A few visits or gifts wouldn't magically heal the rift she'd created. This would take something deeper. It meant letting her children express the hurt and betrayal they felt, and being strong enough to absorb it. Steeling herself, Helen softened her tone and replied with quiet acceptance. You're right, Carmen. One day we'll need to talk through all of this. But for now, I just wanted to start reconnecting with you and your siblings. Reaching out was my first step. I hope it's a good one. Taking this as a cue to share how their lives had shifted, Carmen continued with a bit more enthusiasm. Mom, you wouldn't believe how much has changed. It's like something out of a novel. After you left, Dad was a wreck for a while. Some days, when Lena and I came home from school, I'd have her wait outside just in case something was wrong. Every phone call would make me jump, afraid it'd be bad news, the police, or a hospital calling about Dad. I had to ask Dean to get his act together, to quit the partying and drinking, because I couldn't keep everything afloat alone. He tried, but it was hard for him to be the support I needed. Carmen took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts as she recounted their father's slow return to himself. One day, Dad started reading all these books on grief, healing, that sort of thing. Most nights, he'd lock himself in his room, and we'd hear the keys tapping away on his computer. He was pouring his thoughts out, I guess like therapy. And, Mom, remember how he used to struggle with his weight? Well, he started getting up at dawn to run, dusted off the treadmill, even started lifting weights. It felt like he was finally choosing to live again, and that gave me hope. Carmen paused briefly, weighing her words before speaking with careful honesty. Mom, maybe you don't want to hear all of this about Dad, but it's crucial to understanding what's been going on with our lives. So, I'm sorry if it stings a bit, but, hey, by the way, Dad is looking pretty great these days. Even over the phone, Carmen's amusement was clear. Helen's voice softened with a mix of surprise and gratitude. No, honey, it's all right. I needed to hear it. Thank you for being here for me and explaining things. I really want to know how you, Lena, and Dean are doing. Well, Lena's journey has been complicated. After everything, she just sort of shut down and retreated inward for a long time. But she's coming back to herself now. And honestly, Mom, you wouldn't believe how far she's come. A lot of it is thanks to Diane. Helen squinted at the phone screen, focusing on the unfamiliar woman helping Lena in a photo. All right, who is this Diane you keep talking about? Oh, my bad. Diane is Dad's girlfriend. Isn't she beautiful? And she's just the sweetest person. She used to be a swimsuit model and still does some modeling work. She's the one who really helped Lena break out of her shell. Actually, Diane even encouraged Lena to pursue her own modeling career. Carmen's excitement was evident as she continued. And, Mom, you should totally check out last month's Teen Fashion World magazine. Lena's on the cover. She looks absolutely incredible. She's become really popular in the modeling world lately. Helen's tone grew sharp. Wait, what? Your father's dating some young model, and now she's encouraging Lena to parade around for photographers? If I'd known this Diane was selling cheesecake shots of your sister, I'd be making charges against her and your dad. Carmen took a breath, steadying herself before responding in a gentle tone to calm her mom down. Mom, Dad and Diane are extremely careful. They're always present during our shoots, and Dad makes sure photographers sign strict contracts. Not a single photo can be used without his approval. Believe me, he would never allow anything even close to inappropriate. And actually, Diane is 34, so there's only about an 11-year gap between her and Dad. Not as much of an age difference as between you and Terry. Helen scoffed. What is he? 100? Carmen ignored the comment, pushing ahead with her point. I don't know if they'll ever get married, but from what I see, they're a great fit. Diane has been a huge support to him, and honestly, he's happier than I've ever seen him. I'm just telling you how I see things, Mom. Terry is only 66, Helen countered, her voice slightly defensive. But I'm just not sure modeling is the right thing for Lena. I think she'd do better focusing on something more meaningful. Carmen bit back her initial reaction, turning away from the phone to gather herself before continuing. Mom, modeling has been transformative for Lena. She's found this confidence and grace that she never had before, and she's finally realizing her own strengths. Sometimes she even directs the shoots with these creative ideas for poses. Let's be real. Lena never felt like she fit in at school and she thought she had no future. Now she's building a serious modeling career before she's even graduated, and yes, she's earning a good amount. And, in case you're wondering, yes, I model too, but it's not my passion. I do it to support Lena, and together we've really bonded. Plus, I'm saving up for college. I still love school, keep my grades up, and I'm even taking extra classes so I can graduate early. I've got an A average, but, chemistry this year is rough. I have to ace it for vet school. Carmen suddenly remembered something else, her face lighting up with excitement. Oh, Mom, you won't believe this, she giggled. Lena and I actually get to keep some of the outfits from our shows and photo shoots. So now I have this super trendy wardrobe. Can you imagine? I've gone from a total geek to one of the most stylish girls in class. Some of the same girls who used to think they were too cool are now asking me for fashion tips. And a few even want my autograph. It's funny, honestly, but kinda makes me cringe, too. So, guess what, Mom? I'm basically popular now. And the best part? Guys are finally starting to notice me. Carmen laughed, thrilled by all the new attention. Meanwhile, Helen felt a pang of discomfort. She'd always craved some recognition in life, even leaving her family to pursue it. Yet now it seemed her children were achieving things she could only dream of, and without even trying, which only worsened her sense of frustration. Helen sighed deeply. Sweetheart, I'm glad you and your sister are doing so well. And I don't really want to ask this, how's Dean? Is he okay? Carmen glanced at the clock and took a breath, knowing Dean and Clara would be arriving soon. She was hesitant to rush through the topic, but confident her mother could handle the update. Well, Mom, you won't believe it. Dean has actually turned things around. You remember how he was wild even before you left? After that, he kept drinking and partying with his friends, going completely out of control. Eventually, Dad had enough and told him he either had to quit partying and get a job or go back to school. And Dean, well, he told Dad off. So Dad ended up kicking him out, telling him not to come back until he'd sorted himself out. Dad even had to call the cops a couple of times to get him to leave. Helen was in shock. What? That foolish man threw my son out? How dare he? I'll have Terry call a lawyer and sue him. Helen seethed with anger, gripping the phone tightly. Good luck with that, Mom, Carmen replied with a smirk, knowing her mother had always favored Dean and given him money whenever he asked, even though he never faced any real consequences for his actions. She thought Dean was lucky he hadn't gotten into serious trouble. That all happened a year and a half ago, Mom. Dean and Dad have patched things up since then. Dean was couch surfing with friends for a while, but they eventually got tired of supporting him and kicked him out, too. He spent some time on the streets, and I guess he didn't like it, especially seeing us doing well. So one day he apologized to Dad and asked to come home. Dad didn't back down, though. He told Dean to get a job first. So Dean found work on a roofing crew, and once he did, Dad let him move back in. Now, Dad makes him pay part of the living expenses to help him learn responsibility. Carmen chuckled as she remembered Dean's constant complaints about his tough job and bills. But Dad would always remind him, that's how life works, and you need to deal with it. This arrangement held steady until Clara came into the picture. Do not tell me your father has a new girlfriend. Helen sounded indignant. Who, Clara? Carmen laughed. No, Mom. Clara is Dad's personal assistant. She's no nonsense and doesn't put up with any arguments. Dad jokes that she's his cool boss. Even though she's only 22, she's incredibly sharp and reliable. They met at a conference in Minneapolis where she came up to him, shook his hand, and told him straight out that if he wanted real success, he should hire her to organize his trips, manage bookings, and handle his expenses. Impressed by her confidence, Dad hired her right then and there. Now she lives with us, and Dad jokes about having his own harem. It's hilarious. Carmen laughed again. Clara has been amazing for Dad's career. She's like the big sister I never had, and we all adore her. Oh, Mom, you'd love her. Clara's stunning. She's from Norway, 5'7", with short blonde hair in this trendy cut, and the most piercing light blue eyes. Poor Dean fell for her instantly, but she made it clear that she won't date anyone who lacks direction. That seemed to give Dean a whole new motivation. Carmen's tone turned more serious as she shared the latest about her brother. Now for the big news, Mom. Brace yourself. For months ago, Dean enlisted in the Air Force, and soon he'll be off to language school in Monterey, California. Helen's mind was reeling, hardly able to keep up with all this unexpected news. A language school? For what language, exactly? She asked, still processing. Carmen's voice brightened. Russian. The revelation left Helen momentarily stunned, as if Russian was the last thing she had anticipated. Carmen, noticing her mother's silence, chuckled lightly. I know it's wild, right? Right now, Dean is stationed at Lackland Air Force Base, waiting for clearance. Dad even asked him to come back home for a special party in his honor. Oh, and guess what? Clara started acting a bit softer toward him, although she still won't admit she's actually with Dean. But, Mom, we girls can tell she's fallen for him too. Clara isn't seeing anyone else, and they spend hours on the phone when they can. Dean is head over heels. Can you believe it? He plans to finish language school, then college, earn a degree, and become an officer. My crazy brother, of all people, aiming to become a military officer. It's almost too much to believe. Love really changes people, doesn't it? Carmen laughed to herself, gesturing with her pointed stiletto heel as she animatedly shared her brother's plans. Suddenly, a deep, booming voice echoed in the background, singing The Impossible Dream. Carmen's laughter bubbled over, and she jumped up, darting to the hallway. Mom, you've got to hear this, she said, extending the phone to catch the singing voice, accompanied by mock howling and giggling from female voices in the background. Then came Lena's voice laughing, followed by Nina chiming in. Dad's singing my favorite song. Carmen couldn't resist joining in. Dad, maybe stick to your day job, huh? Or take that act on the road, she teased. The bus leaves in 10 minutes. Ed's voice replied in mock indignation. Amid the girls' laughter, he continued. No respect at all in this house. That's it. You're all off my Christmas list. The chorus of, We love you, Daddy, and reassurances from his daughters that they were back on the list had Carmen grinning as she returned to her mother on the phone. Dad's such a character, Mom, she said fondly. Whenever he's happy or nervous, he starts singing, and we love to egg him on. It's our little family game. Helen could barely find words in response. Her hopes that her family might still be struggling without her were dashed as she heard their laughter. They were thriving, and the realization left her momentarily speechless. Trying to shake off her daze, Helen asked, So your dad is the guest of honor tonight? Yeah, but he doesn't know it yet, Carmen replied with a grin. He's already nervous, though. He and Gary Cooper are playing guitar duets with the band. You remember how Dad loves his blues guitar, right? Ever since he met Gary, they've been jamming together every week, strumming and cracking jokes. Dad always says they're going to become rock stars soon. But tonight's their first public gig. It's going to be amazing. Just imagine Dad in a tux, rocking out on stage. Helen's surprise deepened. Wait, did you say Gary Cooper? Your dad and Gary Cooper are friends. Oh, Gary Cooper? Carmen said with a hint of amusement. She knew her mother had always admired the Coopers, known for their wealth and status. It had even been Helen's dream to meet them someday. But now, not only had Carmen's dad met Gary Cooper, they'd practically become best friends. Yep, he insists that we all call him Gary instead of Mr. Cooper, Carmen continued, letting her words sink in. He's actually really down to earth and even helped Dad early on in his writing career. Can you believe it? Carmen couldn't help but chuckle at the surprising turn of events. Yes, Mom, the very same Gary, or Gary as his friends call him, Cooper, she confirmed. It all started when Dad wrote a couple of articles about rebuilding life after something traumatic, like losing everything when your cheating spouse leaves you for someone else. When a few small magazines bought his articles, Dad was ecstatic. I think Gary read them, reached out to Dad, and asked him to give a motivational speech at a Cooper Corporation employee meeting. Dad nearly had a heart attack when Gary made the offer. He prepared a talk based on those articles and delivered it at the meeting. The response was incredible, lots of positive feedback and gratitude. After that, Gary hired him again, this time to speak at the company's annual shareholders meeting. After that success, Dad started getting other speaking offers from companies recommended by Cooper's board of directors. Things just fell into place from there. Dad kept writing more articles and they started getting published in bigger, more prestigious magazines. Eventually, he quit his job to focus on writing and speaking full-time. Gary kept introducing Dad to important people, and as they spent more time together, they found out they both loved playing blues and rock guitar. That shared passion brought them even closer, and they've been best friends ever since. Carmen let the information settle for a moment, giving Helen time to process everything. It was a lot to take in. Wait, your father? A writer? Helen's voice was incredulous. An author? Published in magazines? Your father, my ex-husband, is actually in magazines now. She couldn't wrap her head around the idea of the man she once knew as an underachiever suddenly finding success. Deep down, she secretly hoped the pay wasn't too generous. Meanwhile, the sounds of guests arriving downstairs drifted up to Carmen. The quiet hum of conversation, laughter, and the deep tones of a new male voice caught her attention, followed by the soft, melodic voice of a woman. Carmen watched as Diane left Lena's room and headed downstairs, no doubt to greet the new arrivals. Suddenly, Carmen remembered a detail she had forgotten about the evening's schedule. "Mom, I'll have to go soon. Gary and Eliza Cooper are already here, along with photographers from the gossip column and the special photo album they put together every year. They capture the enchanted moments of the summer evening affair, and while the whole thing makes me want to roll my eyes, I think the album raises money for charity. So, I guess it's for a good cause, and we get to feel like we're part of something special, like celestial beings or something." Carmen snorted, her sarcasm clear. Carmen had never been a fan of the event's pretentious air, as it seemed to feed the vanity and self-importance of the attendees. But, despite her distaste for the grandiosity of it all, she couldn't deny a certain pride in the fact that her father's success had brought them to a new level of social status, one that might even earn her mother's respect. Helen, ever the defender of high society, quickly countered, "Oh, Carmen, don't be so dismissive. It's a huge honor to be featured in that album, and to know you were part of such an important event. You and Lena should be so proud to be the guests of honor at a gathering like that. You'll be seated at the main table, and your photos will be everywhere. I've secretly bought one of those albums almost every year, and this time, I'm going to proudly show off a picture of Dean, you, and Lena, saying, 'These are my children. Just imagine.' I'm actually a little envious, but at the same time, I'm so proud. As soon as I can, I'll be ordering several copies of this year's album." Carmen, still a little distracted by the conversation, responded absently, "Okay, Mom." Then something else clicked in her mind. Dad was supposed to attend a writing event in New York over Labor Day weekend, and Lena, Diane, Fona, and I were planning to join him. Maybe we could see you then. I'd really like that, and I'm sure I could convince Lena to come, though she's still angry with you for leaving. Maybe we could bring Diane too so you two could meet. And, you'd probably want to see Dad too, just in case," Carmen added with a knowing tone. "Oh, sweetheart, that's a fantastic idea." Helen's voice warmed with excitement. "Let's figure out the details. I really want to see you and Lena. As for your dad and his girlfriend, I'm not sure it's a good idea. Too much has happened on both sides. But I would love for you to meet Terry. After all, he's your stepfather now." Upon hearing the last statement, Carmen grimaced, sticking her tongue out as though she were about to vomit. "Oh no, Mom. I still have nightmares about you and Terry cozying up together. The only way I'd meet him, and you for that matter, is if Dad and Diane are there too. I think that's the least I can ask for." Helen didn't quite appreciate her daughter's reaction, but she tried to remain calm, focusing on continuing the conversation. "All right, Carmen, let's see what happens. But let's not lose sight of what we both want, the goal of finally coming together again. I can't wait to see and hug you and Lena again. So let's focus on that, honey. By the way, you won't believe it, coincidentally, the New York Literary Guild is hosting a special Meet the Books Day over Labor Day weekend, and Terry is using his connections to get us tickets. I'll make sure he gets tickets for all of us," she said, clearly thrilled about the upcoming prestigious event. Helen eagerly shared more details, excited about the upcoming gala. "Can you imagine, Carmen? It's going to be a fantastic affair. Lots of well-known writers will be there, some signing their books and interacting with their fans. You might even get a selfie with a famous author. Terry is practically bouncing with excitement. Need I even mention Victor Collins? He promised to attend, and Terry is determined to meet him. David is a rising star in the literary world, and Terry is convinced that his debut novel is brilliant beyond words." Carmen rolled her eyes but responded politely, "Yeah, Mom, I know about Victor Collins. I've actually met him a few times. I totally agree. His work is impressive. I read his book a while ago, and it really made me think. Helen's curiosity piqued. She pressed on. So, have you read his book? What did you think? Carmen couldn't resist a little jab, catching Helen off guard. No, not exactly. It's just not my thing. But Terry, oh, he's all about it. Helen's response to this was a tight-lipped smile. Carmen could have made another sarcastic comment about the book probably being too heavy on text for her mom's taste, but she held back. Do you happen to have a copy of David's book? Is it hardcover or paperback? Helen hesitated for a moment before looking around. She got up and walked to Terry's office, her voice muffled as she moved. Yes, we have the hardcover on Terry's desk. Why, sweetie? Take a look at the back of the dust jacket and tell me what you see. Helen flipped the book over and froze in place. Oh my goodness. That's Ed. How can this be? This is a photo of your father from about 7 years ago. But it's not Victor Collins. It's your father, not Victor Collins. This can't be right, can it? Tell me this is some kind of mistake. Carmen burst into laughter, barely able to catch her breath as the absurdity of the situation dawned on her. Oh, Mom, there's no mistake. Victor Collins is really Edward J. Mercer. When Dad decided to start writing, he used a pseudonym to keep things separate for all kinds of reasons. His first novel was published under that name, and I think it's absolutely hilarious. Carmen laughed so hard that she almost couldn't speak, wiping away tears. Can you imagine? Terry's favorite author is actually your ex-husband. I swear, this could be a movie. It's just too funny. Helen sat there in stunned silence, completely speechless, before muttering, Crap! Carmen, still chuckling, said, I've got to go, Mom. I'll send you my email and we'll figure out our plans for Labor Day weekend. I really want to see you again. Love you, Mom. Seriously, this is still cracking me up. Helen's voice was barely audible when she replied, Say hi to your brother and sister for me, and don't forget to give them my number. I love you too. Carmen turned off the phone, still grinning at the hilarious turn of events. She made her way downstairs, fully prepared to smile for the cameras and play the role of the perfect guest. As she passed the large mirror, she smiled at her reflection, already imagining how the evening would unfold. No one would know why she was in such a good mood, but that didn't matter, she knew. Meanwhile, Helen sat motionless, staring at the book on the table. The realization of what had just happened sank in slowly. The truth was undeniable. Karma really could be a bitter force. Just as she was trying to process her thoughts, Terry walked into the room with excitement written all over his face. Helen, you will not believe what just happened. I got a card from Victor Collins himself. I wrote to him, telling him how much I loved his book, and he responded. He wrote it by hand. Can you believe it? Let me read it to you. Dear Terry, I'm so glad you enjoyed my first novel. You've had a greater influence on my career and life than you realize, and I look forward to thanking you in person. You've really given me the spark I needed to grow both as a writer and a person. I'm deeply grateful. Best wishes, Victor Collins. Terry was practically bouncing off the walls, so full of joy as he rambled on. He even mentioned that David's photo looked familiar, though he couldn't place where he had seen him. His excitement about meeting his new favorite author was palpable. But Helen, trapped in a wave of growing gloom, could hardly bear the weight of Terry's words. With a dry, cracked voice, she muttered, Shut up, Terry. Just shut up.